a lot of people are discussing these days the trials and tribulations of being a purely professional player and how it might not be enough these days. It might not be necessarily paying the bills. No, it might not be the best strategic approach.
Can I do our first ever no neutral Twitter reading?
Go ahead. Brian? Go right ahead, please.
My man Minna RD says, being a competitor alone is not really the way. Too hard, and if you win, you gotta wait half a year for payment. It's time to change. And then he eventually did follow up, saying that my point is a player should be able to sustain himself if he has success competing like in any other sport. I don't have the need to talk about this in my personal case since I'm a very lucky case. But the truth is 99% of players are not able to, and it's frustrating. And even if I see the points of each side and tournament organizers too, since I also have worked as well as all three in my community, the focus should not go on comparing who gets what. Let's focus on making it possible to work in any area of the FGC and be able to make a living, not fighting each other. Beautiful. I love the way that he ended that off there, Brian, because, you know, I think that there's a lot of people at the forefront of the FGC who are like really young guys and don't always have the maturity and foresight to end something positively like that way and try to push towards a good direction as far as the whole scene. But with all that stuff out the way, let's get down to the nitty gritty, bro. Let's get down to the real talk. So this is something that is talked about a whole lot behind the scenes, guys, right? I've talked to a whole lot of players about this sort of thing. There's people who feel like players should be able to, that's the main part I want to focus on. They think players should be able to sustain a living off of just playing in the FGC without having to do content, without having to build a brand. You know, so the NBA, for example, LeBron doesn't have to be a streamer or a XYZ. He can just play and make a living. But Brian, I think there's some key differences between the FGC and the NBA that makes that not possible here. And just no fault, you know, it kind of is.
I think that difference might be a couple $1 billion, but beyond that, you know, it's interesting that Mena mentions athletes, because I think if you look to a lot of other sports, let me ask you this: how much does the number one bowler make? How much does the number one table tennis player make? In my mind, the biggest bowler of all time is the guy who popped up and said, "Who do you think you are? I am." To me, he's the most influential bowler of all time. Yeah, I have no idea who the number one bowler is. I think the FGC sometimes doesn't realize that we are relatively small in the big picture. We're a very dedicated and very passionate community, and we love our games to death. And I mean, I think sometimes that might blind us that a lot of other sports, if you want to make that esports to athletics comparison, not everyone is eating like the NFL and NBA. It is a common struggle. So, and beyond that, even the players in those realms, in those leagues, they do media. It's in their contract. They got to go do interviews. People want to talk to them. They do commercials. They do endorsements. They do all sorts of other things besides sitting there and practicing and honing in on their skill. It's a very common subset. So I think there's a reality of the economics of the situation. Is there enough money to be made right now doing solo competition with the level of competition that there is right now? There's just not. It just doesn't exist. You just cannot make that amount of money. And even if you are, it's a very precarious position to be in, because what happens if someone just comes up and starts beating you?
Yeah, facts. It's very unstable. And you know, a lot of people hate this being brought up, at least as far as like pro players, competitors. They hate the phrase building a brand, right? All of a sudden, you are sustainable. You are able to make some type of a living or side income or whatever you want to call it, all on your own. You're not depending on anyone but yourself and your fans who rock with you. You know what I mean? Like, so, and the internet nowadays makes that very easy for us. And if you are a top competitor, you already have a decent following. There's 1 billion people across the globe who 100%. Nobody knows. They have 0 followers. Nobody knows them, and they want to get their stuff off the ground. They're getting the 1 viewer on Twitch and things like that. Some people watching this right now in the chat, in the comment section, or some of those people. These are people who have thousands and thousands of followers and can't be asked to utilize it or to understand why it's something that will be very beneficial. Well, what if I just want to be a player? What if I just, bro, If you want to just be a player, then go ahead, champion. Do it. Nobody has a gun to your head forcing you to, hey, what's going on, guys? I'm top player X. No, just don't make any content. But don't complain either about the situation you're gonna have, because this is here how we get to the second half of building your own brand. Imagine if all the top players made fire ass content and collabed with each other, and even if there's little drama stuff here and there, whatever it may be, just regular fire YouTube type stuff, right? The scene can grow. The scene can get bigger. 100%. It'll be more entertaining. You're doing work for your damn self. It's a symbiotic relationship. So you grow the scene, and then you grow with it, because a rising tide lifts all ships. And if worse comes to worse and you don't get a kickback, well, who cares? Because your brand is getting big enough that you are sustainable within your own community there that you have created. But the last thing I'm going to say is that people say, oh, well, I'm a player. Brian F is a player, a top player, very strong. And he works a full-time career. I'm not going to say job, because I don't want you to think my man working at nothing. I ain't going to say a specific job, but I'm just saying, it ain't like he just doing some little part-time. My man getting to the, you know what I'm saying? My man getting to the bread. And that takes a whole lot of time and effort. And then on top of that, he is one of the most, if not the most consistent content creator in the entire scene. He's doing all of it, and he reaps the rewards from it.
Well, beautifully said. You got me blushing a little bit using me as an example there. And I don't like to flex as much as you do, Rob, but sometimes I feel like you got to remind people the reality of the situation. And I think you did. That's it. I mean, it's economics 101. You can't expect to make a return on this if there's no money to be made. And the other thing I want to say, just because you covered that beautifully, the only thing I want to say as far as players, I understand the frustration, because I used to be on the other side of that, where I would think that people should just be able to make a living just doing what they want. And I understand not wanting to go outside of your comfort zone, or not like engaging in that sort of content thing, because that's not everybody. That's not how people are. People don't want to be an entertainer. That's totally fine, and I understand being in that position. And there's people whose personality doesn't really match that type. Content doesn't have to be you speaking to a camera, or being a bombastic personality, being a RobTV type, being someone who's teaching. That's kind of like what I do with my content. I like to just play and show people things. Literally, people just want to watch you play. You are not delivering. You are when you are a top player, when you're that good at the game, people want to see you play. And you are not centralizing and reigning in control of your production. You have labor to provide. You provide a product, and that is quality entertainment gameplay. And most players are not taking control of that. They're not centralizing that for themselves, because we have these great tournaments. We have avenues like Street Fighter League, Capcom Pro Tour. It's great to get out there. But what about every other day of the week? What about, this thing is, it's 24/7. Anytime you're practicing, there's someone who wants to see that. There's someone who is interested and is like, oh, I didn't know this character could do that. Well, I didn't know, like, this high level stuff looks pretty cool. Oh, this player plays this way. I really vibe with that. I enjoy that. People want to see this. And I don't think a lot of top players recognize that. And I think they get discouraged by maybe the results that they see early on. But oftentimes that's a problem with packaging, or how it's being presented. It's something that they're not working with the forums and the platforms that are available. They're not really, they're fighting the platforms rather than working with them. And there's a lot of people out there who know they like fighting games and are not being delivered the content. And there's people who don't know they like fighting games who haven't found us yet.
They just don't know.
They don't even know yet. It's potential eyeballs, potential audiences that can help everybody's cause here.